This is the third 3.2 video. So we're continuing to talk about polynomials. And we want to use the synthetic division that we learned in the last video or last lesson to factor this polynomial. So since x equals -2 is what we're going to put in the box. Remember, we put the coefficients next to the box. So we start with 1, 3, -4, -12. We drop that first coefficient down. And we take the number in the box times the number below the line and write it above the line. Then you add. I almost wrote -1. 3 plus -2 is a +1. Okay, then you repeat the process again. So take the number in the box times the number below the line, write it above the line, add. -2 times -6 is 12. And we end up with 0 as an answer. When you get 0 as an answer, that tells you that the number you were dividing with is a 0. Okay, and they told us that it was in the directions. We confirmed it with the math there. Now it wants us to factor the whole polynomial. So what we have left here, x squared plus x minus 6. Since we started with a cubic, these are the coefficients of a quadratic. You go down 1 degree, so from a cubic to a quadratic. And these are the coefficients, 1, 1, and -6. So we need to take this quadratic and factor it. So something that multiplies to get -6 but adds to get 1, that would be 3 and -2. So we write that as x plus 3 times x minus 2. But if we were to multiply that back out, we would just get this quadratic again. And we want it to factor to equal the whole polynomial. So we need to include the 0 from the very beginning. Since it's a -2, that would be x plus 2. So the full factorization of that is x plus 3, x minus 2, x plus 2. Now I encourage you to write down the next problem and then pause the video and actually try it and see if you come up with the same answer once you hit play again. All right, on this next one, you are going to put 2 into the box. The coefficients that you're going to list across the top come right from your polynomial. You're going to go through that same synthetic division process that you went through before, multiplying and adding. And hopefully, when you did all of that, you ended up with a 0 at the end, because that's our goal. Yay! Now, we started off with a quartic, so that means if we reduce that by 1 degree, that these are all coefficients of a cubic. So we have x cubed plus 3x squared minus 4x minus 12. When we have 4 terms, we have to factor by grouping. So you may have gotten to this point and then not known what to do next. 4 terms, factor by grouping. So you're going to group those first 2 together, group those second 2. If now you remember, again, pause the video, see if you can get the rest of it factored okay. So we have x squared times x plus 3 minus 4 times x plus 3. That gives us x plus 3 times x squared minus 4. That's the factorization of the cubic, but we want to include our original, so we're going to need that 2 to come down and become a factor. Then we also need to factor this x squared minus 4, because that's a difference of squares. So I'm going to take that up here. We're going to stay with the x plus 3 that we had before. I'm going to factor the x squared minus 4 to x minus 2, x plus 2. And then since we needed this additional 2, that would be an x minus 2. Since we already had an x minus 2, we really don't need to list them out twice. So for our final answer, we'd say x plus 3, x minus 2 squared, because we had 2 of them, and then x plus 2. And those can be in any order. So it doesn't matter the order you list those factors in, but you don't want to write out a factor more than once. So make sure if it shows up twice or 3 times that you change it to the appropriate exponent. All right, so pause it, write down number 3, and then come back to here how we're going to approach it. The zeros of the polynomial are -1, 2, and 3. We want to find a third degree equation, so a cubic, written in standard form. All right, so that means we need to put each of these into a factor. So -1 or a -1 is going to become x plus 1. A 2 is x minus 2. And a 3, x minus 3. To put it into standard form means we just have to FOIL that out. So hit pause, multiply the first 2 together, simplify, then take that answer and multiply it times the third one. Go ahead and give it a try, then come back and check. When you multiply the first 2 together and simplify, you get x squared minus x minus 2. And then we're going to take that times the x minus 3. When you multiply all of that, you're going to have lots of terms. So you need to make sure to combine your like terms for your final answer. So if we start combining some like terms here, we'd have x cubed minus 4x squared plus x plus 6. And notice that it said I wanted an equation, so we just need to throw in a f of x equals or y equals over here so that we can make it an actual equation. Y equals x cubed minus 4x. Wait a minute, I don't think I added that right, did I? Yeah, minus 4x squared plus x plus 6. Just double checking the work there. All right, let's take a look at number 4. We're going to kind of do the same thing on number 4. So hit pause and write down that equation. See if you can write out the factors and then multiply it just like we did on number 3. So we want an equation, so it's going to be y equals. Standard form tells us to multiply. Y equals this 0 right here. We don't need to say x minus 0 because that would just be x. But then we have a plus and a minus 2. So x plus 2, x minus 2. Doesn't matter which ones you multiply together first. I'll probably multiply these 2 together, but you can do it in any order you want. If I multiply those 2, we get x squared minus 4. And then distribute the x cubed minus 4x. All right, number 5 is our last one. This one says it wants a third degree polynomial, but only gave us 2 zeros. Well, if negative square root of 6 is a 0, then positive square root of 6 will also be a 0. So that's kind of a little hint. If you see a square root, it always has its opposite in there. So when we put that into the equation, it's going to look a little bit uglier, but it's the same format. X plus 3 for the negative 3, x plus square root of 6 for the negative square root of 6, and x minus square root of 6 for the positive square root of 6. Again, you can multiply those in any order, but I would multiply the second 2 together first. So hit pause and try that. Multiply those second 2, get an answer, and then take that answer times the first one. So when we multiply this one out, we'll see how those square roots end up canceling each other. You know I hate that word, but they will equal 0 here in the middle. So we have x plus 3 times x squared minus 6, and now we don't have square roots anymore. That's why I wanted you to do those first, because it eliminates the square roots, which makes it easier to multiply. So we have x cubed minus 6x plus 3x squared minus 18. And then I noticed that I don't really have any like terms to simplify, but how I have it written is not in standard form. So I need to flip some things around. So x cubed plus 3x squared minus 6x minus 18. Well, my final answer to have all of the exponents in descending order so that it is actually in standard form. All right, so that's all for 3.2.